Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to the Manggcast. We missed last week. We did not have a Manggcast last week for those who were paying attention because I stumbled on Honey Boo Boo's music video and I think I blacked out for about 9 or 10 days. But I have recovered. I am back, and we have not as much to talk about, actually, as I thought, although I'm sure it'll take me about an hour to get through, conveniently. But I have a busy day today, so we're going to dive right into it. First thing we're going to talk about is Fallout 4. This isn't really news, I guess. It's more as kind of a discussion, I suppose. But there was a bit about how the special system and the perk system is going to be working for Fallout 4. And since I care a whole hell of a lot for the series, and I'm very excited for Fallout 4 now at this point, I thought that I would talk about it. So, for the fans of the series, for people that have played even just Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas, the system has been pretty similar throughout all the games. Well, all the main games. You have your attributes. Your special system, or things like that, where you have your strength, your perception, charisma, intelligence, agility. You have all that kind of stuff, and then you have your skills, and these are stuff like your gun skills, your melee weapon skills, lock picking, stealth, repair, stuff like that. And then you have perks, which you got every few levels. And these would occasionally boost certain skills or certain attributes, or they would also give kind of really weird kind of stuff. Here and Now perk would just give you another level right away, or there would be the Swift Learner or whatever, which would give you more experience anytime you gained experience, or they would increase reactions from other characters. Bonus damage, all sorts of different perks. But Fallout 4 apparently is going to be changing this a little bit. They are keeping the special system, so you still have your strength, perception, blah, blah, blah. And they're keeping perks, but it's going to be a little bit different, and they're actually getting rid of skills entirely. And so how it's going to work is, from the sounds of it, having a stat of 1, they've traditionally gone from 1 to 10. Having a stat of 1 was really bad. You play Fallout 2, you have a strength of 1, that's pretty bad. You can't really lift anything, you'll never do almost any physical damage. You might have a character with a strength of 1, but you're never going to try to do anything physical ever. But from the sounds of it, for Fallout 4, it seems like everything is going to start at either 1 or 0. I'm not entirely clear on this. And you are going to start with 28 points, special points, and you're going to assign this and raise up your special attributes into different, levels. So having a strength of 1, I guess what it does, it unlocks perk level 1 for strength. And so a lot of the stuff that skills kind of let you do are going to be put into perks instead. And so they explained that it was our goal that all the perks be balanced amongst each other, regardless of if they required a 1 or a 10. The higher the special requirement, the more focused or exotic the perk was for that playstyle. Take, for example, the Agility 1 perk Gunslinger, 20% more damage with pistols, and the Agility 10 perk Gun Fu. Your second target in VATS takes 25% more damage regardless of weapon. So having the Gunslinger perk, which is 20% more damage with pistols, that's really good. That only requires Agility 1. So at first I was really taken aback by the fact that they're getting rid of skills. I was like, what? That's been kind of part of the game for many, many years. And they're just throwing it out the window. and they're replacing it with perks. But the perk system does sound good, and they said the previous skill system had some confusing parts and ended up spreading your choices too thin. Some of you had questions like, what's better, the charisma special or the speech skill? Why are assault rifles and small guns? Additionally, many perks simply raised associated skills. And I can understand that a little bit, because there is a question of, do you want to raise your charisma attribute or your speech skill a little bit? But the system as it was very similar to, a lot of how pen and paper RPGs work. You look at D&D, you can have a high charisma, or you can just put a lot of points into, diplomacy or persuade or something like that. And so it would let you have a low charisma and put points in other places, but if you really wanted to be good at just speaking, you could put points into, persuade or something. That's how kind of RPGs work in many ways, in many examples. The only concern I might have is the part where he says spreading your choices too thin. I'm not sure exactly what he means by that. I don't know. We'll see. I kind of like the idea of that you start at just a blank slate across the board, starting at like 0, whereas Fallout 3 or whatever, you start it with 5 in every special, and you can raise some a little bit more, drop some a little, but I have to see how this kind of plays out in the real world Fallout 4 playthrough. I guess I do like that they are looking at they looked at the skill system, the perk system, the special system. They looked at it and are like, we can make this better. Whether or not it's actually better, we'll find out. But I like that they are, they want to make some changes. For better or for worse. All right, moving on. Twitch playing Dark Souls. Remember this? I haven't talked about it in a little while. And last time I talked about it, man, I don't remember what they were doing. They were doing all right. I think they beat Ornstein and Smo. And they were in, like, the catacombs. I think that's where it was. Well, they did actually beat it. They beat Gwyn. They finished the game. It took them 43 days total. But they did finish it. If they had not switched to the pausing method, they probably would have never beaten it. They'd still be staring at the ladder, or, God knows what. But yeah, 43 days, 8 hours, 14 minutes, and 23 seconds. They killed Gwyn. And they died 904 times. Which, I don't know. Some people probably surpassed that in their first playthrough, but hard to say. And so, with finishing that, they have now moved on to, of course, Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. And as of this recording, they are 6 days, 16 hours into the playthrough. They've died 425 times. And as I'm watching it, they are in the at the Tower of Hade. I'm not exactly sure how much they've accomplished. It doesn't look like they've done much. They entered the the basic first newbie covenant. They've leveled up some, but I don't know how far they actually are. But yeah, there are 189 people watching, and it's gonna keep going, I guess. Pretty crazy stuff. Just as an update. All right. So, in a recent Q&A with the president of Sony's Worldwide Studios, Shuhei Yoshida, he was asked about if Sony will ever develop a successor to the Vita. This is what he had to say. That's a tough question. People have mobile phones, and it's so easy to play games on smartphones, and many games on smartphones are free or free to start. I myself am a huge fan of PlayStation Vita, and we worked really hard on designing every aspect. Touch-based games are fun, there are many games with really good design, but having sticks and buttons make things totally different. So I hope, like many of you, that this culture of playing portable games continues, but the climate is not healthy for now because of the huge dominance of mobile gaming. Well, so from the site, he didn't really answer the question, but he kind of did by saying, no, shut up, the Vita sucks, and we're done with that. But his response, I guess, was the climate is not healthy right now for a dedicated mobile console. To which Nintendo, I think, kind of chuckles at, because their 3DS is basically their best performing hardware at the moment, and the reason that Nintendo is kind of doing okay, they've sold over 50 million 3DSs, and they're doing just fine, I guess. And so I think he didn't want to really admit, because who would ever admit that the Vita really sucks if you work at Sony? But this kind of shows that, they are, Japan and... Well, Japan specifically, I guess. Because I think might even be bigger there, but... Japan is very into mobile gaming on smartphones. And, Japanese game developers and companies are very aware of that. And so, like I've said, you could put a large amount of resources into a dedicated mobile console, such as the 3DS, or such as the Vita, and hope for the best, hope that it works out, and hope that people take to it, and, developers keep going to it and putting out good games, and people keep buying it, and you sell a lot, and blah, blah, blah. Or you could just make free-to-play smartphone games, or, freemium, or whatever they call it, pay to win, however you want to explain it, which have a much lower risk. And I mean, I don't know how much money I don't know how much money Squaresoft makes on all their mobile ports and games and things like that. I'd be curious to know. But yeah, it was kind of, avoiding the question, but also pretty much answering it. Yeah, the Vita definitely was kind of a tragedy. But I think part of that was Sony's doing, because, I mean, I own a Vita. When I first heard about the Vita, I was interested. Here was a mobile console that seemed like it could be everything that I wanted. It had a nice big screen, dual thumbsticks, it looked slick, it was going to have, some good hardware in it. I could be playing, I could be playing like Uncharted on the go like that, and it seemed like it had a lot of steam, but yeah, we got some shoddy mobile kind of ports and price gouging, and it was marketed weird, and nobody really picked it up, so developers don't want to work on it, and then Sony gave up on it, and it's done. I don't think they're making any... I don't think Sony is definitely not making any Vita games that I have heard of. Let me look at the upcoming PlayStation Vita game releases. We have Dengeki Bunko Fighting Climax, Farming Simulator 16, and Super Meat Boy. Corpse Party Blood Drive, Earth Defense Force 2, Sword Art Online, and finally in January, Lego Marvel's Avengers. Oh, apparently Legend of Heroes, which could be pretty cool, but that game apparently originally came out in 2013, so it's another port, or maybe that was a Japanese release. Anyways, yeah, it's sparse, and not one of those is a Sony thing, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, they're done with the Vita. I don't think they're ever going to make another mobile console unless it really makes a resurgence, but I don't see it. Like, I think a lot might be weighing on the NX. I think Nintendo is in the position to really kind of determine if a dedicated mobile console can work. And dedicated might not be the right word because, you know, the NX could be kind of a hybrid. But something other than a phone that plays games, you know. We'll see. There will not be a Vita 2. I think we can all believe that. So TwitchCon happened while I was blacked out, I guess. And I don't really care. I don't watch a lot of Twitch. I don't really stream on Twitch. I'm part of the YouTube gaming movement now, apparently. And so the kickoff keynote for TwitchCon, Twitch decided to announce some new features that they're planning on bringing to Twitch fairly soon, early 2016. Probably the most biggest thing is video uploads. So you'll be able to upload videos, give them custom thumbnails, arrange them in playlists. And that sounds pretty familiar, because it kind of sounds like YouTube. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how that will go over. Twitch is very focused right now. It does one thing, and it's very big. It does streaming. It might not do streaming well. It depends on who you ask. But it does streaming, and that's where people go to see things streamed. Now, almost every Twitch streamer, I think, also has a YouTube channel. I don't know how much, you know, each one will upload to it, but usually they have YouTube channels, and they might upload videos to it. And so there's kind of this this split. You know, you go on Twitch to see them stream, but you might check their YouTube for videos. Twitch wants to make it, you go on Twitch to see them stream, and then after they're done, it's like, oh, hey, they've got videos here too. Boom. So it makes a hell of a lot of logical sense why Twitch would do this. And, you know, they're definitely firing back on YouTube because YouTube wanted to kind of expand their game into the streaming market. So now you can go on YouTube and be like, oh, they're streaming on YouTube, and look, they have YouTube videos and blah, 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 and it's all there. So yeah, this makes sense. I don't think this is really unprecedented or shocking. We'll see how it works, because I think a lot of people have issues with Twitch's layout and functionality and things like that. And so Twitch is also going to be upgrading their video player. Eventually, I guess, to HTML5, which is what YouTube is now. And yeah, they should probably have HTML5. They're probably also going to be doing some redesigning and things like that to make it look better, work better, stuff like that. That's not a shocker. So yeah, we have definitely a big competition going on then between YouTube and Twitch for the place to be for gaming content, whether it be live or recorded. It's tough. It's tough on kind of both ends. Twitch has very much established itself as the streaming place, and so even though YouTube is a juggernaut on the internet, just jumping into the streaming world is not easy when Twitch exists. On the other hand, YouTube is the place to just look up videos. It's not Twitch. People don't go to Twitch to watch videos. So they're both kind of fighting a battle. You know, they're trying to get into the other person's, you know, the other company's market. I don't know. It's too early to say on what will happen. I mean, if I were a betting man, I might place money on YouTube winning out in the end. Just because more people go on YouTube than Twitch day by day. But yeah, YouTube is either way fighting an uphill battle to get people to just, hey, we have YouTube gaming, look, see? The handy thing is that, you know, you can go on YouTube and somebody's streaming, you get And, you know, you get notifications that they're streaming while you're watching a video. But they also integrated that with Twitch. So if you're watching somebody's video on YouTube, you'll get a notification, like an annotation, that they're streaming on Twitch. I wonder if YouTube will ever, like, remove that. They're like, no, forget that. You don't get to know if they're streaming on Twitch. I don't know. It's tough to entice people. For me, I don't stream that much, but I've done it. It's tough to entice somebody to switch. Because it's not like there's not really many incentives or anything like that. It's what works well for the streamer and what works well for their fans, you know. If one system works and they don't really see a reason to switch, they're not likely to switch. So yeah, it's an uphill battle for both of them. We'll see how it goes. They did mention some other minor features, but nothing. That was the major stuff. All right, Microsoft has purchased Havok. And Havok is a company that primarily makes physics software. You've probably heard of it. Havok Physics was a pretty big deal a while back. A lot of games used Havok Physics. Since then, there have been other physics engines that have been used and, you know, kind of made, and, you know, there is competition in the physics world, physics engines. But yeah, still to this day, many games do use Havok for their stuff. But now Microsoft has purchased the company entirely. They own it. Now, if anybody wants to use the Havok physics engines, they have to license it from Microsoft instead of license it from, I think Intel owned them previously. Yes, Intel did own Havok previously. So, yeah, pretty much for most companies, for most game companies, instead of writing a check to Intel, they have to write a check to Microsoft. Which is not a big deal. The only thing that really changes is that Microsoft, for their stuff, they don't have to write a check to anybody for it. Sony might be a little hesitant to write a check to Microsoft, but I don't know. I don't think it's, like, maybe it's an incentive for them to use different, you know, physics engines, but I'm sure they already do use some different physics engines for different stuff, and it's not like, you know, it's not like these companies are against, you know, any sort of collaboration with the other like Microsoft sends Sony a check for, you know, every Blu-ray and an Xbox One, so it's just kind of how it is. Some people said that this will, you know, help spur creation of, you know, more physics engines to kind of combat this, but I don't really think it's a big deal. Other physics engines exist, and I don't think people really care if they're writing a check to Microsoft or Intel. That's just a price you gotta pay unless you want to use another one. Havok is not the end-all be-all of physics engine. So yeah, it wasn't major news, but it was another thing that's like, oh yeah, Microsoft, they just kind of picking up more stuff. More companies being absorbed. The mega corporations are coming, folks. They're on the way. Microsoft might be one of them. Alright, so that's all the video game news for today. We do have some movie stuff to talk about. And the first one, as I've kind of prattled on about before, is Pacific Rim 2. This movie just, man, oh man, it's like a roller coaster of ups and downs, and I don't, personally, if you're asking me, I don't know if it'll get made within the next 10 years. If you're gonna ask me at this point, that's what I would say. There's just too much ups and downs with it. It's not like, oh yeah, it'll definitely get made. Yeah, you know, Jurassic World 2, yeah, done. It's not like that. There's just too much. So the latest news is that Pacific Rim 2 was bumped off of the release schedule. entirely by Universal, and it was replaced for August 4th, 2017 with Pitch Perfect 3. Like, that hurts my heart a little bit. You know, Guillermo del Toro's sequel to a giant robot kaiju movie is being bumped off by Pitch Perfect 3. So that sucks. But now, coming soon, broke some news that the film is apparently still happening, and it's going to be redated to a later date. And you know, they're committed to making it, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know. And actually, a lot of pressure is on... Well, I mean, a lot of pressure is on Guillermo del Toro, just in general. This is kind of... You know... He's a prolific director. And it's kind of like, this is your thing, you know, Guillermo. And it's interesting how much pressure is on him for this movie and for his other movie coming out this month, Crimson Peak. And so insiders are, I guess, saying that Crimson Peak's performance will be pretty crucial to whether or not Pacific Rim 2 gets made. Like, it's interesting why that matters. But it's really kind of a personal thing. Like, you know, it's whether or not Guillermo del Toro is a bankable director. If he can make, you know, it's weird. Like, what does it matter if a horror movie that has nothing to do with, you know, giant robots makes money or not? But, yeah, it comes down to just one man. You know, it's whether or not he can make... But he's not in charge of marketing or anything like that, of getting people in seats. But I guess it is a little bit if it's a good movie or not. And so if he made a good horror movie, people will recognize that and they'll want to see Pacific Rim 2. Like, it's weird. Here's my concern. I see Crimson Peak failing. I really do. I don't want it to fail, obviously. This is a gothic horror movie from Guillermo del Toro. I'm very excited for it, but I don't see it working. I'll tell you why. One is because it's gothic horror with kind of like a romantic hint to it, which is just weird. Two, Guillermo del Toro is not really a bankable director. Most common Joe Schmoes don't really care about Guillermo del Toro. Sad to say. He's not like a really huge name director, unfortunately. Like, I'm not a Joe Schmo, I guess. Well, nobody admits they're a Joe Schmo. But I'm not really sure what directors, like, common, normal movie-going people really have heard of. I guess, like, you know, Peter Jackson, Steven Spielberg, who else would be a common? Ridley Scott, maybe. Probably some others, but I don't think Guillermo del Toro is thrown in there. But none of his movies have really blown anything out of the water, except, I guess, the Hobbit movies. Although even them paled kind of to Lord of the Rings. They did pretty good. I mean, they were definitely profitable. They were his most profitable movies. But Crimson Peak is... I don't see it working for those two reasons. But finally, because it's a horror movie... It is a horror movie with a budget of $55 million. Production budget. That's nuts. Like, it would take me a while to find horror movies just do not cost that much. I mean, let me look here. Shutter Island, okay, which some would call a horror movie. I I thought of that more as like a mystery movie. But Shutter Island has a budget of $80 million. And that performed okay, $294 million. But that was Leonardo, which was pretty big. What else? Prometheus. That's not a horror movie. Oh, here we go. The Wolfman. Here's a prime example. The Wolfman, the recent Wolfman remake from 2010, had a production budget of $150 million. And this was like it was a pretty big deal. Kind of had an ensemble cast. It was a remake of a very well-known film. And $150 million budget made $139 million at the box office. Which is good, but even if Crimson Peak made 139, I guess it would depend on how much of that is domestic. I think they would accept 139 million, but I don't know. I don't really see it working. I just don't. I want it to, but I'm not sure I see Crimson Peak succeeding that much. And that puts Pacific Rim 2, again, strangely, at jeopardy. So, yeah. It's really unfortunate. Because Godzilla 2's getting Godzilla's getting a sequel, which that was not a great movie, but there we stand. All right. Speaking of sequels, Fast and the Furious. That's a series. Am I right? Yeah. So, word has kind of been broken that Vin Diesel wants to make one final trilogy in order to end out the whole series. Thus, Fast and Furious 8, 9, and 10. 3 more movies. There you go. There you go, alright? This really just proves that it's all about money. That's it. That's all what it comes down to. It's just money. Like, they're not begging. They are not begging Vin Diesel to make 10 movies of Triple X, or even of Riddick, or of, I don't know, whatever else he was in. What was that weird AD movie? Oh, man, now I have to look that up. He was in that weird science fiction movie that I thought was going to be a big deal, and nobody ever saw it. I have to look it up. Babylon AD, that's what it was. Yeah, nobody saw that. Anyways, yeah, so 10 Fast and Furious movies. 10 movies is not unheard of course, for a series. You know, plenty of classic horror series have gone up that far. But those are horror movies, which again have very low budgets and generally high returns. The fact that we're probably going to get 10 Fast and Furious movies, which are high-budget action films with somewhat ensemble casts, is really insane that we're at that point. We have the Terminator series, which I'm going to be talking about in a couple minutes. We have the Terminator series, which is only up to 5 movies, I guess. And that's, like, everybody's heard of Terminator. It's been around forever. Terminator, everybody likes Terminator. But, Fast and Furious started in 2001. 2001. It's been 14 years. We're going to have the 8th movie 16 years later. I mean, that's pretty quick. That's pretty quick. I'm definitely okay with this. I like the Fast and Furious movies quite a bit. They're just, it's just entertaining shit. It doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of ridiculousness going on. But it's always fun. It's always just fun. Also, I'm hoping that, Vin Diesel is just raking in the money, just big balling it, and we're going to get another Riddick movie. Maybe a really good one. We'll see, but yeah, definitely more cars and crashing and all that kind of going on in the future. A lot of people, I think, speculated that the series was going to be done because Paul Walker died. I think myself included, I thought, that was kind of a big blow to the series and to Vin Diesel personally, that he would just kind of leave it there and be like, okay, this, we're just going to put it down in respect to him and just kind of leave it alone and walk away. But 3 more movies, like, it's just like, damn, man. It's almost, I don't know. He's definitely receiving a lot of pressure from Universal. I'm absolutely sure. Universal has a lot of big franchises, and they don't like to leave any of them as long as they're profitable. And Fast and Furious is definitely profitable. So, yeah, more cars. So, speaking of Terminator, this kind of proves what I was talking about in the last Manggcast, where I was talking about domestic gross and foreign gross. So they have kind of said, this was talking to David Ellison, who's the head of Skydance Productions, who worked on, did Terminator Genesis. And so he said Genesis did well overseas, especially in China, where it grossed $112 million, which is pretty damn good for China. But the $150 million plus movie still will lose money, and sources say the notion of a Terminator universe is on hold indefinitely. That wasn't him saying, but that was what the article kind of mentioned in regards to him. So sources say notion of a Terminator universe is on hold indefinitely. So, okay, breaking it down. Let me just get all the numbers that I need. Just a second. Okay. So, yeah, production budget of Terminator Genesis was about $155 million. This is not including marketing, which I'm sure was substantial. We'll say $200 million, and we'll just leave it at that. It made $89 million domestic, and this is really the problem, all right? This is really the issue. That is an abysmal domestic gross for a big movie like this. That means they made about $45-ish million profit. So, okay, we'll be generous and say that so far, for the budget to cover their asses, they need to make about $150 million foreign. Okay. Now, again, a layman that just looks at the numbers, they see, okay, production budget $150 million, worldwide $440 million. Oh my God, so much money, yes. No. Okay. Now, if that was domestic 440, all right, we'd be hearing about Terminator Genesis 2 very soon. But foreign, it made $350 million, which again sounds like a lot, but they only get about 25% of that, like I said. So, if I can do some math, that's like, what, 95? No, that can't be right. 85? 89? I don't have a calculator. We'll say 90 million. I don't know if that's accurate. We'll say they made about $90 million profit from foreign markets. So, that's about $135 million profit total out of, again, assuming about $200 million total budget, which is a failure. And even though they said they were working on back-to-back sequels for Genesis, then they hear these numbers and they're like, shit. And apparently why they wanted to do back-to-back sequels coming out in 2007 and 2018 was because the franchise is going to revert back to James Cameron in 2019, and he'll be the sole controller of it. Whereas right now, I guess Paramount has a good stake in it. So, yeah, they wanted to just slip that in real quick, make the money, bleed it out before James Cameron got it, and he doesn't know what to do with it because people are sick of it. At this point, they're not going to find it profitable, so they're probably going to let it sit and just be done with it. It'll go back to James Cameron. He might do something with it. I doubt it. It's pretty much just Avatar for James Cameron right now. So yeah, again, I'm just trying to tell you to look at the numbers properly. Don't just glance at them and be like, oh yeah, it made so much more money than its budget. It's like, no, it didn't. So again, if you're always wondering what movies are going to get sequels or not, you can break it down. So China had made $112 million. Again, that's about $28 million profit, which is not really anything special. I know I've said that they really want to push the China market hard, but they need to bump up their profits. Or they need to just... I mean, there's definitely... Like, the population of China is like 3 times the population of America. So they definitely can do incredibly well there, but it's tough. China is not the same market as America. Not yet. Again, I don't know if the numbers are exactly 50% and 25%. I don't know. This is what I've read. I'm sure it's somewhere around there. Maybe it's rising for China, and that's why they're pushing it so hard in China. But they're also pushing hard in China because there's, a billion people there. But they're not pushing hard in India, so I don't really know how it works. I'm not an insider, but there you go. Terminator, we might not see one for a while. Okay, this goes back then to another thing that I mentioned in relation to the Gambit movie. So last time we talked about this, I said that the then plan director of the Gambit movie, Rupert Wyatt, had left the project citing scheduling conflicts. Okay, he had said that he very much looked forward to it, but regrettably it pushed in the start date, now conflicts with another project. And so he left. And so I had said that could be true. I can't deny that could be true. But you always got to wonder if there's just something else going on, and there's just always just, here's what we're going to tell people so they'll believe it and we move on. Well, now we actually might get an inside look at what actually happened. And what actually happened is that Rupert Wyatt apparently wanted to do things for the movie that the studio did not want him to do. As in, he had plans and ideas, creative ideas for the film that the studio wasn't very comfortable with. And so, studios, again, this is kind of the eternal strife, I guess, of the filmmaker. Is the filmmaker, from probably a very young age, believes them to be... They believe themselves to be a kind of creative butterfly, like many writers and artists and all sorts of, they believe that they have something special to offer and unique to bring to the world and to the masses, and they have their own visions and blah blah blah. Studios just see pretty much dollar signs, okay? I know it's somewhat cynical, but I'm pretty sure it's accurate. And so studios believe that they know what works, they know what doesn't work, and they know how to make money. And so they'll see this guy that, thinks he's a creative butterfly, and he has all these ideas that don't conflict with the studio's ideas. And so the studio is just like, you're gone. Get out of here. We're going to find somebody that's going to do what we say. And then, boom. And they do. And so... it's, we going back to Fantastic Four. Fantastic Four, there was a lot of hubbub about whether or not the director of that, Josh Trank, he had said that the movie was kind of out of his control, and the studio just came in and demanded all these things, and blah, 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 blah. And so we'll never really know. Again, like, the studio never really says anything. It's always just kind of the people involved. They're like, they pass the blame. But it's very easy for just a director to just get kind of isolated, I guess. So, of course, Rupert Wyatt didn't want to come out and say, oh, you know, I didn't, they were telling me to do things and I didn't want to do them, so I'm out of there, because that just kind of gives him a bad rep, you know. He'd rather say, oh, it was a scheduling conflict, I had to step away, but I wish them the best. You know, you want to play nice, because otherwise they'll just find somebody that will play nice. So this is kind of, yeah, what I was saying, where it's hard to ever trust exactly what kind of the press release says and, you know, what the official word is, because generally there's probably going to be some sort of alternative reason or, you know, secret explanation. So yeah. They still have yet to fill the director's seat for the Gambit movie, so it's looking possible that the movie will probably get bumped in its release date. I don't know if I really see it coming out exactly, like it's a year and 4 days from right now. I don't see it happening. Maybe if they fill it really quick, but a superhero movie, that's a lot of post-production. Yeah, I'm sure it'll get bumped. Okay. All right. So, this is something kind of interesting. I don't know how many people actually realize this. I found out about this a while back, and I always thought it was pretty interesting. The song "Happy Birthday," it's you know, it's an actual song. Happy birthday to you. I'm sure you've heard it. That song was actually copyrighted. It had an actual copyright. And so I guess like the tune, like the actual melody to it has been in public domain, but the lyrics have been copyrighted. And so if you've ever wondered why at restaurants they don't just sing happy birthday to you, it's because of the copyright. I mean, some weird restaurants probably don't even care. They just like to do weird happy birthday songs. But, yeah, that's generally the reason, is because the lyrics are copyrighted. And so to actually use it, you need to pay a licensing fee to Warner Chappell Music. I mean, the copyright has kind of been passed around a little bit, but... And so for that reason, you don't actually often hear the song Happy Birthday in many movies. Because, you know, you have to license it, and, you know, it's not probably going to come cheap for a movie, and just use something else. And so, finally, the lyrics to Happy Birthday to You are officially part of the public domain. The actual process, I'm not, it's very convoluted. It's copyright law. It's all kind of strange. I'm not involved in all this, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if a company can reacquire it or not, or if it's in public domain, it's done. Everybody can use it. But yeah, people can use it now. I don't think this will change restaurants at all. I'm sure they're still doing their own same thing. But yeah, we might hear Happy Birthday to You in movies more often. It's ridiculous, I know, but a lot of people didn't realize, I guess, that the lyrics were copywritten. So there you go. All right. Finally, then, for my weird piece of news of the day, it is about Blade, actually. And it's about actually Blade-themed, a Blade-themed event. And this is going to take place at the New York Comic-Con, which is taking place between October 8th and 11th, so very soon. This event is taking place October 9th on a Saturday at New York's Terminal 5, and it is called the Blood Rave. If you've seen Blade, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if not, the opening scene of Blade, if you haven't seen this, like, my God. But the opening scene of the original Blade movie is a rave at, like, this kind of underground nightclub. And so you just see a bunch of people just raving it out to a very, very good just kind of EDM dance track type music. And during the rave, the sprinkler system turns on, and instead of water raining down on the people dancing, it is blood. And you realize that these people are all vampires. And so they begin to kind of just revel in the bloody rave, and it's just like, my God. And then, of course, Blade shows up, and it's one of the greatest scenes of all time, because he just goes ham on all their asses, and it's awesome. So they apparently want to recreate this to some extent at Comic-Con by featuring some EDM acts. Apparently Crystal Method will be there. And there will be fake blood involved, apparently. I guess. And, yeah, people are going to be raving it out while covered in fake blood, and it's going to be really messy. Apparently there's also going to be, like, a separate area without the raving going on that's going to be modeled after Deacon Frost's apartment from the movie. But yeah, there's going to be a blood rave. That's what's happening in real life with fake blood. Now, the only way that I would ever go to that is if Wesley Snipes actually showed up in his full Blade attire. Like, I think I would actually shit myself. Like, oh man. I don't know if he's really the type of actor to ever do that, but, oh man. I would accept being punched in the face. Like, I would just punch me in the face. Do it, Blade. All right. So that was the weird piece of news for the day. All right. Two more things then. First is the Mangg's movie recommendation of the week. Since we are in October, and October, of course, as I've mentioned many times, is the month of horror, I will be doing horror movies recommendations for the whole month. And so that will be... We actually get 5 Manggcast during October. The 3rd, the 10th, the 17th, 24th, and the 31st, Halloween itself. So, for my first horror recommendation of October, I made sure... I went back and I looked at my top 10 horror movie videos that I made a little while back, because I didn't want to recommend those again. I feel like I've already recommended all 10 of those. Wanted to do something new. I've already talked about this movie in like some random Dark Souls videos, but I want to officially recommend it, and that is The Bay. This is from 2012. It is a found footage movie, but it's kind of more in the style of like a mockumentary or a faux-mentary, like a fake documentary. And for some reason, I don't know, I just really, really like this movie. It's grown on me so much. Basically, it is a documentary about a young, a young first-time journalist covering just some ho-hum 4th of July festival in some ho-hum Chesapeake Bay town. And shit kind of hits the fan with people breaking out in this plague, basically. And so it's half the movie is kind of the journalist and some other, characters reacting to this. It's just like it happens all very quickly. It's very quickly paced with this plague breaking out. So that, some of it's that, but also some of it is like the CDC and some doctors trying to figure out and some not marine biologists kind of trying to figure out how this started and what's going on, and what they've never seen this before, and so it's documentary-esque. And so for that reason, the found footage kind of works. The whole movie is not just shaky cam. The CDC stuff and that kind of thing, it is more stable. like webcams and stuff. But it is, I don't know, for some reason I really like it. I recommend checking it out. It's not like a slasher movie or anything like that. It's not particularly like there's not really many jump scares or anything like that. It's kind of like, you know, damn, this is effed up. It's one of those types of movies. So yeah, I recommend checking it out if you're in the mood for kind of a faux horror documentary type movie. Pretty interesting stuff. So that is The Bay. All right, so final thing to talk about for this week is my review of The Green Inferno, which I saw this week. And The Green Inferno is directed by Eli Roth, and it's his kind of entry into the cannibal subgenre of horror movies. And so there aren't many cannibal movies. At least not in the last 20 years. There have not been that many cannibal movies. We've had, let's see, Wrong Turn. That series has been generally about cannibals. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, although I don't know how much of that is really, I don't think they really eat too much anymore. That was what the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was about. But I'm not sure how much anymore. House of a Thousand Corpses, I think, is about cannibals, although I don't remember. But anyways. So cannibals, not a tremendously popular topic for horror movies, and yet here we are. And so the plot is, well, here's the problem. Here's the problem with the kind of tribal cannibal subgenre is, you know, the plot before you go in, because the plot can't be that crazy. It's usually a bunch of foreigners, you know, Americans specifically, and they go into, you know, a rainforest or, you know, some sort of other tribal situation, some far away from civilization where phones don't work. And they get kidnapped by headhunters and cannibals, and then a bunch of them get eaten and killed, and maybe one or two escape, maybe not. And that's pretty much it. Like, there's not a whole lot of leeway for kind of what can go on. And so that's exactly the plot of the movie. It's basically a bunch of, like, social activists that want to go into the jungle to prevent the horrible corporations from bulldozing the forest and, you know, wiping out these natives. And so they go there and they do stop the corporation. They protest and they record the whole thing on their phones. And then they're all celebrating on the plane on the way back. And I guess that the plane was sabotaged, probably by some corporation, I guess. And so they crash back into the jungle, and they get kidnapped by headhunters. And, yeah, that's, you can imagine the rest. So I guess the plot is really not the focus of it, but really, to be honest, that's generally what I watch a horror movie for. I watch it for the plot. Like, I don't watch it for the cheap thrills, and I don't watch it for the kind of the kills or the goriness or anything like that, or the scares. I watch it because I hope that it will tell a unique story. Like, when you watch a comedy movie, I don't, but some people apparently watch comedy movies. You watch it for the laughs. I'm pretty sure. The situation or the plot of the comedy movie is more just a vehicle for delivering the entertainment, the laughs, you know. It doesn't really matter, and you can make a comedy movie about all sorts of different situations. It's just, as long as it's funny, then it works. Whereas horror movies, I feel like the situation is why I'm watching it. And the plot is why I'm watching it. And that's why I do watch a lot of kind of middle of the road or lower rated horror movies, is because there's so many kind of unique stories to tell. I don't tend to watch a lot of just like slasher movies, because it's generally mostly the same stuff. But I like kind of the supernatural stuff and the weird kind of things like that, or the unique situations that that can be created from these kind of fictional stuff. And so you have the Green Inferno, which is not really that fantastical of a situation. It's far-fetched, because I don't think there are any headhunters, cannibals in Peru. But, it's not totally out of the realm of possibilities. Like, we know that headhunters exist. That's why we have a word for them. And cannibals have existed. There are places in the world that we just don't really go. And, there are tribes that have no real concept of civilization and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, it's somewhat believable. It's not really, there's nothing supernatural going on. It's just cannibals. Whereas I compared it while I was watching it to another recent movie called The Ruins. And The Ruins was not a tremendous movie. It wasn't anything, like, oh man, that was so good. But it was a unique, interesting plot. The plot of The Ruins is basically very similar situation. They're on vacation in, like, this jungle in, like, Mexico or something like that. And they go out into this remote location, and they stumble across some, like, Mayan ruins. And they, like, step up onto the ruins. And, like, a bunch of these, like, Mayan villagers appear. And they, like, prevent them from leaving the ruins. And so, basically, you find out that the ruins contain, like, this very, very hostile, like, never heard of before plant life that, like, kills people and infects other people as soon as they, like, touch it and things like that. And so, the characters are basically doomed from the start. But it's this kind of unique, somewhat less believable situation, but it's very interesting. And so I would compare The Ruins much more favorably than I would rate it much more favorably than Green Inferno, just because of this kind of unique situation that has occurred. Green Inferno, it's like, okay, yeah, they're headhunters and they're captured and it's shitty, but it's just like, I don't know. It's not the fact that there's nothing supernatural going on. I've liked horror movies that have nothing supernatural, but it's just like, they're captured by these cannibals. You know what's going to happen, and it's not particularly interesting. It's just kind of gory. And so, it's a torture porn movie for, like, to the truest extent of the word. Like, they get tortured, they get eaten, and it's just like, okay, this is pretty effed up, and I wouldn't want to be in this situation, but it wasn't terrible, but there was nothing surprising about it. And after I finished watching, I was like, okay, it wasn't bad. I don't know if I would watch it again, but all right. And my dad asked me, he's like, what would you say is the redeeming quality of the movie? And I sat there stumped. I was like, huh. I mean, when you phrase it like that, I mean, the writing is not really special. The acting is, I mean, Eli Roth pretty much in every one of his movies now, he has to cast his wife as, like, the lead actress. But the lead actress's roommate, who's only in it she's not in for very long, but her acting, I'm telling you, it was a Mangg's movie. And when I was watching her act, it was like I was in a theater watching a Mangg's movie. Like that, I feel like it's the closest I've ever gotten. And apparently the actress that played her is a singer, I guess. She started out as a singer, and now she's going into acting. She should not go into acting. Oh my gosh. So terrible. So the writing was great, acting was, meh. The plot, of course, was, as I said, nothing really special. It is exactly what you expect. So then it just comes down to, like, okay, like, was it entertaining? And it's like, it wasn't don't know. Because I rail on a lot of movies for not being scary, just being startling. You know, movies that have just a lot of jump scares. This movie didn't really have any jump scares, and yet it still wasn't really scary. And so I guess it comes down to what is scary. And so, you know, you try to explain scariness as being somewhat sort of atmospheric. And, you know, there's just this kind of brooding tension that rises into kind of just horror. And so that you try to get kind of the middle of the road between the two extremes of the spectrum, where one is just, well, I guess one end is like Japanese horror, which I don't like because it's just, all it is just brooding, slow-built horror. And the other end is like the worst of American offenses, where it's just, whoa, jump scare, jump scare, jump scare, oh, look at all this, isn't this scary? This Green Inferno falls in a weird place, because it's, it wasn't scary, it wasn't jump scares, but it wasn't brooding tension either. It was just kind of this weird, it was closer to, it was torture porn. That's what it was. Like, I can't explain it in any other way than just torture porn. It was not scary, it was just, look at all this gore, you know? And it wasn't like the goriest movie I've ever seen or anything like that, but that's all it offered. Was just, look at this. Wouldn't you hate this if you were just having your eyes gouged out and your limbs ripped off and like, look at this, isn't this terrible? And it's like, yeah, okay, but that doesn't make entertainment. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like, was this a well-made movie, you know? If I set out, if I myself had this kind of budget and set out to make a cannibal movie, would I have done much better? I don't know. For what it was, for what it was as a cannibal movie in Peru with a bunch of foreign American kids getting caught up by these headhunters, that's what it was. That's what you expect. So I guess I can't harp on it too much, but I feel like it could have done better if it was just more interesting. There are some parts that were just kind of like, what are you thinking, Eli? Like, this is just dumb shit. Like, there's one part where this girl, I don't know why or I don't know what happened, but she basically gets like the massive shits. And so she has to rush over to one side of the cage of the group that they're all in, and she just takes this huge shit that kind of just goes on. And all like the headhunter kids are like laughing and like, you know, and the rest of the group is just like, oh god. And it's just like, it didn't add a single thing to the plot because they never mentioned it. Like she didn't die, or it was just like, oh, she had to take a massive shit and that was it. Like, it was just, oh, it's so stupid. With all, you know, the sounds of a massive shit that you can imagine. It was just, yeah. And then there was another part where literally a guy, like the main asshole guy that you're supposed to hate of the group, he just starts like jerking off. I swear to you, I'm not making this up. He just starts jerking off, and the rest of the group is like, oh, what are you doing? You're in this situation? Like, look, they're all captured by headhunters in the cage, and he's just like jerking off. He's like, you know, stress can really affect your decision making and, you know, things like that. And it's like, you would do this, you know, you would be wise to do the same. And he just keeps doing it, even while this guy is like trying to wrestle him. He's like still jerking. It's just like, my god. And you know, it reminded me, I think it didn't even remind me, it was the exact same thing as that Mangg's movie that I reviewed a couple years back. It was called, man. Yeah, that's what it was. It was called The Vampire Conspiracy. Yes, The Vampire Conspiracy. You can look up my Mangg's movie review of that. But the exact same situation, the exact same thing happened in that movie. Where one of the guys who was kind of creepy just starts jerking off. And I think he says like the exact same thing. And I think Eli Roth watched The Vampire Conspiracy and he's like, I'm going to put that in my movie. Because nobody's seen Vampire Conspiracy. Nobody will know that I stole it from there. I'm on to you, Eli. I know what you're doing. You're stealing gags from Mangg's movies, and you're putting them into my theater, and I don't like it. So yeah, I can't recommend Green Inferno unless you really are just into torture porn and gore and things like that. But I honestly feel like we can be better than that as a society. Like, not morally, but creatively, we can be better than that. So, yeah, there you go. So that is going to wrap up this week's Manggcast for October 3rd, 2015. I don't know how crazy the rest of the month is as far as news is going to be. As we get closer to the holiday months, I'm sure we're going to be hearing about things. But, yeah, you know, it is what it is. Next week, this Tuesday, I'll be going to see The Martian, which I am very, very excited about. So hopefully I have a gushingly positive review about that. Now, in the next Manggcast, you can look forward to that. But my name is Mangg. This has been the Manggcast, and I will see you fine folks next week.